Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, November 14th. It's approximately 10 a.m. My name is Christine Burke. I'm a public utility law judge with the Maryland Public Service Commission. We're here today for an evidentiary hearing in the matter of PSC case number 9751, which is Columbia Gas of Maryland, Inc.'s application for authority to adopt a new infrastructure replacement and improvement plan and surcharge mechanism, also known as STRIDE. Today's hearing is being streamed on YouTube, and we're ready to proceed. If I could have appearances of counsel, please.
Theodore Gallagher on behalf of Columbia Gas.
Good morning, Candace Tonello on behalf of Columbia Gas of Maryland.
Good morning.
Good morning,
The
Your
Office
Honor.
of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ryan Shu on behalf of Office of People's Counsel. Also with me is Jacob Auslander.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ruthie Herman on behalf of staff and Michael Dean on behalf of staff.
Good morning. Are there any preliminary matters that we have to address before starting? Counsel? Okay. Please.
Good morning, Your Honor. Make sure this is close enough. Columbia has prepared an exhibit list, and we can mark this as Exhibit 14. We've circulated it to you on Tuesday, which I believe was the 12th. We can mark this as Exhibit 15. I've provided a copy to the court reporter, the parties, and yourself. Or I could read the entirety of the document into the record, but the document includes exhibit numbers A, B, C, and exhibits 1 through 10, 10C, 11, 11C, and 12 through 14. So I would leave that up to you if you'd want me to read the entire document into the record.
Are the parties stipulating to Columbia's exhibits?
We haven't asked the parties, but it's my understanding they have crossed for 3 of Columbia's witnesses. We have another witness, Mr. Sosnick, that I believe you have questions for, Your Honor.
Yes.
So those witnesses are here subject to cross-examination,
Okay.
but we would request the direct testimony of Christy Phillips be admitted by stipulation. No one has indicated cross or questions for her.
Is there any objection?
No objection, thanks.
Okay.
So we would request that all of the exhibits, I guess with
Be
the
marked.
exception of Christy Phillips, which we've already admitted, but the other ones would be admitted subject to cross-examination. The testimonies, that is. The other ones would be certificates of publication, the application itself.
Okay, so I will mark the exhibit list that was circulated as Columbia's Exhibit 15, and that indicates all of the exhibits for Columbia, and they'll be entered as witnesses testify. As far as the testimony of witness Phillips, there's no objection, so that will be marked and entered into the record. The direct testimony, which I believe is Columbia's Exhibit 9, under mail log 311271, filed July 31st, 2024.
Yes, thank you. And Your Honor, we are prepared to begin with Mr. Sosnick, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Okay. If you would like us to go first with our witnesses before the other parties do their exhibits, we're prepared to call him now.
Yeah, let's start with your case.
Okay. Columbia calls Kenneth Sosnick to the stand.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm on the penalties of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your business address.
My first name is Kenneth. My last name is Sosnick, S-O-S-N-I-C-K. My business address is 11401 Lamar Avenue, Overland Park, Kansas. Zip code is 66211.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Sosnick, who is your employer?
Black & Veatch Corporation.
Okay, and what is your position there?
I'm a managing director.
And what is your role in this case?
My role in this case is part of a Black and Veatch team that reviewed the risk assessment methodology that is applied by NiSource, which includes the Columbia Gas of Maryland.
And did you prepare direct testimony in this matter?
I did.
And for the record, we have marked it as Columbia Exhibit 7, mail log number 311271. It was filed July 31st, 2024. Mr. Sosnick, if I asked you the questions in your direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Do you have any clarifications or corrections?
No, I do not.
And with that, Your Honor, we would offer Mr. Sosnick's direct testimony for movement into the record, subject to your questions. No other party has indicated cross for him.
Is that correct?
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
I do have a couple questions, Mr. Sosnick.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning. On page 12 of your testimony, you indicated that the LOF, which is the likelihood of failure, I believe, in the risk assessment score, that NiSource uses statistical methods that best represent historical experience for Columbia's assets. Do you know what statistics NiSource is using?
As I sit here today, I think Ms. Alexander, who operates the model, would tell you more detail of the statistical methods for the historical experience of the Columbia assets. It was more of, this response was more of a add-on, I will call it, to what Ms. Alexander will tell you all the details of those methods.
Can you hear me? I don't hear myself. Okay. Do Optimane and Uptime MRP that were previously used by the company for project selection, do they assess risk in dollars?
My understanding is they did not. Again, those are historical models, methodologies that were utilized by NiSource, Columbia Gas of Maryland, and that was outside of our purview of our retainment to look at the current risk assessment, not the historical methodologies and software that was utilized by NiSource, Columbia Gas of Maryland.
Was the consequence of failure a part of the risk assessment prior to Columbia using Synergy?
I think it was a aspect of Synergy. Again, that's a better question for Ms. Alexander. Here, under the newest risk assessment, that consequence of failure, as we've highlighted, and Columbia Gas of Maryland is highlighted in their filing, is I'm trying to think of the best word here, is heightened, right? Not just looking at likelihood of failure, but using a best practice of looking at a consequence of a failure.
Can the consequence of failure impact the overall risk ranking of a segment?
Yes, I believe it does, yes.
And can you explain how?
So I guess I think of this as we sit here today, if there was a piece of bare steel 10 feet long that was under the sidewalk outside this building, the consequence of that bare steel pipe failing would be much more of a consequence than if that same 10 foot of bare steel pipe was in a cornfield in Hartford County, right? So the consequence of an event and the likelihood of that event if those two likelihoods were equal, the consequence in terms of when you look at the consequences of failure categories is much more impactful if that bare steel pipe 10 feet here had an issue compared to Cornfield and Hartford County, Maryland.
Your testimony you provided, I believe, on page 20, a table.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Is the mic on? I'm not sure I can hear you.
Mine is, but maybe I'm not close enough. On page 20,
Okay.
table 1, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Page 20, I think, is the last page of your direct testimony.
Yes, I'm there.
For the years for 2026 to 2029, the risk profile for those years, what assumptions is that based on?
Just so I want to make sure I heard you correctly, the risk profile is your concentration?
Correct. On page 20, the table 1.
Sure. So everything is a snapshot in time. Everything is changeable because of the dynamic nature of the industry. When you look at the risk profile for 2024, that risk profile is based on not just the 2025 project list. It's the snapshot of the NiSource, Columbia Gas of Maryland's review of its projects that could occur over time. So the only project list that has been provided is 2025. Given the nature of the industry to have a long lead time to get projects ready to go with permitting, for example, what this shows you is the plan that's being proposed by Columbia Gas of Maryland is right now there's a risk profile. If we aggregate the total value of the consequence of failure as we sit here today of $40.5 million, if approved or when approved, that risk profile drops to $28 million in 2025. And you can see that risk reduction over time in the columns that follow. So as you go out through time, that risk profile baseline and then the stride risk profile shows that you are going to decrease over time the overall risk by completing the projects on the 2025 roster. And then as you go forward, as stride 1 and stride 2 provided, that project list each year comes in and it's going to have not exact projects, not the same exact projects. It's not a fixed time, but only the 2025 project list is, project roster, excuse me. And so that risk reduction that you see is, back to our example, if you had that 10-foot piece of pipe under this building that was going to be replaced, and to say that that had a $40 million impact if there was a catastrophic failure, if we do that project, and I know it's a project roster, I'm just simplifying it, you see that risk reduction by completing that project. If you just thought of this table as that one project, you would see that go down to the risk reduction of being 99% risk reduced by addressing that bare steel pipe that sat under this building, for example.
With respect to the baseline risk profile, does that assume that there's any normal operating level of replacements being made?
So what you have here for the baseline risk is only looking at the projects themselves. It's not the total system risk. Because every time you work on any aspect of the system, you're going to change the total system baseline risk. This is the baseline risk of the stride snapshot in time projects. of course, Columbia Gas of Maryland is addressing leaks in real time on their system, and anytime you find a leak or an issue and you address it in real time, the baseline risk for your overall system is going to change. But this, again, is a snapshot of the STRIDE project review.
Would focusing on the highest risk segments with the highest risk scores maximize risk reduction?
In a perfect world, yes. There are complicating factors of looking at projects that may fall under a broader permitting application that may not have the same risk as quote unquote the highest risk project, but it's something that would be a project that would reduce risk greatly, that would be easier to execute in a timely manner, perhaps than the highest of highest risks. There's always, or should always be, the ability for the experts, the folks on the ground who know the system inside and out, to give their information, give their feedback on what's capable. Hey, we know that this, Hagerstown or Cumberland, we know that they're replacing sewer line. This would be a perfect opportunity. Well, the concrete's up, if you will, to do this project or that project. So there's a lot more than just kind of picking the highest risk given circumstances on the ground.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Are there any questions in light of my questions?
No questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Nothing from the company, Your Honor.
Okay.
We would ask if Mr. Sosnick could be excused from the hearing at this point.
Yes,
if
and we'll enter his testimony into the record as, I believe that was Columbia's
Exhibit 7.
Exhibit 7, correct. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sosnick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, at this time, Columbia calls Rebecca Danhires. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm under penalties of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your business address.
Yes, Rebecca Danhires. It's RIBEKA DANHIRES. And my business address is, wow, I'm spacing on 121 Champion Way, Canonsburg, 15317. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Ms. Danhires, could you state your position with the company?
Yes, I'm manager of rates and regulatory for Columbia Gas of Maryland.
Okay. And did you prepare direct testimony that has been marked as Columbia Exhibit 5 in this matter?
Yes.
And did you also prepare rebuttal testimony that has been marked as Columbia Exhibit 12?
Yes.
Yeah. Did I say rebuttal? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Also, did you sponsor proposed tariff sheets that have been marked as Exhibit 4 in this matter?
Yes, I did.
With respect to your
direct and rebuttal testimony. If I were to ask you the same questions that are listed in those testimonies, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And do you have any corrections to provide to those pieces of testimony?
No, I do not.
Ms. Dan Hires, referring to staff witness Acosta's surrebuttal testimony, at the top of page 15, he was asked about whether he agrees with you regarding calculations that Columbia recommends regarding contingency pipe. He responds, "No, I do not agree with the proposed modification of the 10% I recommended. I disagree with Dan Hires' proposal. Under this proposal, rather than recovering $7.3 million in mainline spend, the company would seek to recover $7.2 million in mainline spend. I do not agree with this alternative due to the fact that the percentage for the recovery of the contingency pipe will be more than 10% and not as I recommended." Ms. Dan Hires, under the Columbia's proposal, would the recovery of contingency pipe be more than 10%?
Under Columbia's original plan proposal, yes, it could be recovered as more than 10%. We proposed a 75-25% split.
Okay, but in your rebuttal testimony, did you provide for some leeway on that position?
Yes. In my rebuttal testimony, we heard what staff was suggesting, and we did modify our cost recovery for contingent pipe, and that information was provided in witness Brumley's rebuttal testimony as Exhibit RB-2R.
Okay, referring to that attachment to Mr. Brumley's rebuttal testimony, could you highlight how your proposal would work such that any certain project would not recover more than 10%?
Yes, so in that spreadsheet, we have a column marked rebuttal proposal, and it has a 10% threshold. So that means if a project on our roster is 90% or above bare steel and pre-82 plastic, we propose recovering the full amount of that project. If contingency pipe is greater than 10%, then we propose an allocation. So we would recover the percentage of bare steel and cast iron only through the surcharge, and then defer the remaining to the company's proposal for a request for a rate base increase.
Okay, and if you could take just one of the projects on that RB-2R and explain that.
Yes, so if you look at the second page, if you guys have it printed, I believe it should be the second page. The Porter Street project, if you look there, our percentage of bare steel and pre-82 plastic is, not 90% or above. It's 39.5%. We would propose in that column where it says rebuttal, 10% threshold, we would propose to recover just that percentage of bare steel and pre-82 plastic, which works out to be $1.6 million of a total estimated project cost of $4.1 million. And then the remainder, 2.5 roughly, would be deferred.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further rejoinder questions.
Office of People's Counsel, cross-examination.
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Dean?
Good morning, Ms. Dan Hire.
Good morning.
I'm Michael Dean. I'm one of the attorneys with staff. I just have a few questions. It shouldn't take too long. In your direct testimony, which is Exhibit number 5, you discuss your cost recovery plan on page 6 as originally proposed. And that's also in attachment A. I'm not quite sure what the exhibit number is for attachment A.
Are you referring to the original plan, the roster?
Yes.
Yeah,
On-
that is attachment A.
And page 10 of 19.
Oh. Page 10 of 19 of the project roster?
No, of what was filed as attachment A to the application.
Oh, is that the plan? Is that the plan?
I think that's the stride plan itself.
I was going to say, are you referring to the stride plan?
Yes, I am.
I'm sorry, and you said page 10 of 19?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I am there.
And is this also a description of the original recovery plan for the costs?
Yes, so what is in the plan on page 10 is the same information of how we would treat mainline replacement projects that was on Exhibit 1, which is the original filed project roster.
Okay. And for items with full recovery on the mainline replacement, for items with 75% of bare steel and pre-1982 plastic mains, anything greater or equal to 75% would be fully recovered. Is that correct?
Yes, that was our original plan proposal.
So then if under your original plan, if a project had, say, 70%, then only 70% of the total cost would be recovered?
Under that original plan proposal, if 70% was considered contingent pipe, that would not be recovered through the stride surcharge.
If it was 70% priority pipe, which you consider to be the bare steel and the pre-1982 plastic, then the 30% would be contingency, and under your proposal, 70% would be recovered through the stride surcharge,
Yes, that is correct.
and then the 30% would be recovered starting with the next rate case.
We would defer that cost and then seek recovery in a base rate case.
Okay. And then going down through the rest of the categories, service line replacements would be fully recovered,
Yes, that is what we are proposing.
and inline inspection replacements.
Yes.
And then next you also have the point of delivery modifications. Those would be fully recovered under your plan.
Yes.
And then telemetry additions to both the services and the main lines.
That is correct.
Turning to your rebuttal testimony, on page 5, you discuss the modification that you proposed to the cost recovery plan as a option for consideration, correct?
Yes.
And this would come into effect if the law judge would adopt staff's recommendation on for only allowing 10% and above as being fully recovered. Is that correct?
So the 10% that we're proposing would just be applicable to mainline replacement work.
Okay. And in this plan, all the other items would be fully recovered.
That is correct.
Beginning on page 6, one second, I think I wrote the wrong page number down. Now, the company considers a project as being complete and allowed for recovery when the piping has been transferred to the main line and the prior existing main line has been abandoned. Is that correct?
Yes, when the project is in service, we consider it completed for recovery.
How is the cost of the restoration work considered under this?
So in our Stride 1 and Stride 2 plan, any restoration that would, let's say, roll over into the following calendar year would be picked up in the reconciliation filing. So those rates would go into effect May 1st of the following year. We're proposing the same treatment under this Stride plan.
So does that include restorations that are done in the same year as the work?
So if restoration is completed the year of, it would be collected then. It's just anything that has carried over would be picked up in the reconciliation filing.
If staff witness Acosta's recommendation that project costs not be recovered until full restoration work is completed, how would that affect your cost recovery plan?
We have not done an analysis. I mean, we don't know what the project costs are yet to determine what that would do to our cost recovery. But, according to what is in the statute, the company is permitted under that statute to recover real-time costs associated with pipeline replacement work.
On page 8, at line 20, starting at line 21 of your rebuttal testimony, you discuss staff witness Acosta's recommendation that 2025 stride work not commence until all the prior stride 2 work has been completed. And then at the top of page 9, there's a statement here that the company expects the prior stride work to be completed by mid-November 2024. Do you have any updates to this information?
Yes, actually our last project to be completed was the Bean project, and that is completed as of this week.
So all prior work is now done?
Correct.
And has the restoration work on that prior work been completed?
It's my understanding that some of the restoration work has been completed, but Witness Brumley might have a better indication if all of it is completed, but if It isn't. I think it's probably a small piece, maybe more related to soft restoration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff has no further questions.
Thank you.
Is there any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
I don't believe that we entered into the record Ms. Stanheyer's testimony.
Apologize. If I could move into the record.
Okay, so Columbia's Exhibit 5 and Exhibit 12 will be admitted to the record,
As well as Exhibit 4
and
that she
Exhibit
sponsored.
4, which is the tariffs, yes. I just have one clarifying question. Ms. Stanheyers, what does soft restoration mean?
No, I shouldn't have said that. No. Your Honor, I'm not the expert on hard versus soft restoration. Witness Brumley could definitely do a better job, but my understanding of soft restoration is, planting of grass or, disruption of soil. I think that's probably pretty accurate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Honor, Columbia calls Raymond Brumley.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm under penalties of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your business address.
Sure, it's Raymond, Raymond, Brumley, Brumley. Business address is 121 Champion Way, Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, 15317.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Brumley, by whom are you employed?
Columbia Gas of Maryland.
Okay, and what is your position?
I am Director of Construction.
Okay. Did you prepare the following testimony and exhibits that have been marked as follows? Columbia Exhibit 2, the proposed stride plan. Columbia Exhibit 8, your direct testimony. Columbia Exhibit 10, your rebuttal testimony. And 10C, your confidential version of your rebuttal testimony. And Exhibit 13, your rebuttal testimony.
I did.
And if I were to ask you the same questions that appear in those pieces of testimony, would your answers today be the same?
They would.
Do you have any corrections to make to any of that testimony?
I do not.
Okay.
Closer. Sorry.
Mr. Brumley, looking at Staff Witness Acosta's rebuttal testimony, at the top of page 10. He mentions that in your rebuttal testimony, the company is not sure where in the system are the different pre-1982 materials by year of fabrication and years of installation. And he continues, due to a lack of record keeping, not all such data exists. Mr. Brumley, when in the pre-1982 era, were there requirements that the company record data regarding manufacturer, year of installation or the items described in Mr. Acosta's sewer bottle?
There were not.
Okay. And toward the end of page 10 of Mr. Acosta's sewer bottle testimony, he mentions an inconsistency between and Your Honor, before I continue with the question, at this point we're going to be getting into some confidential items.
Okay, so prior to entering any confidential areas, I'm going to ask that we hold all of that till the end, because I have to go off the record on YouTube in order to address those.
Okay.
So if you could just wait as far as any questions or anything related to confidential
Okay, then.
items, and I'm going to ask the other parties to do the same, and we'll go into confidential session.
All right. Then I will, for now. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Brumley, you heard Ms. Danhire's testimony with respect to the status of 2023 projects that have, from Stride 2 that have carried over to 2024?
I did.
Okay. And do you agree with her statements with respect to completion?
Yes, completion. Just to add, the final restoration, there is a small piece of mill and overlay on one street that will be done, scheduled next Friday.
Okay. And what is soft restoration?
Soft restoration, she was accurate. It's the restoration of soil. It could also be mulch in a mulch bed in a customer's house or things of that nature. To restore the yard to like or better than it was.
Thank you. That's all I have pending the questions about confidential.
Matters. Okay, thank you. OPC, I'm going to ask you if you have anything directed to confidential areas to please hold that towards the end. You'll have an opportunity to ask those items.
Okay. So, are we going?
I'm sorry, I didn't ask to enter his stuff into the record.
Oh.
Subject to cross. So, Your Honor, at
yes.
this time, Columbia moves that its exhibits 2, 8, 10, 10C, and 13 be entered into the record subject to cross.
Is there any objection from council?
No objections from staff. Thank you.
So items 2, 8, 10, 10C, and 13 will be admitted to the record. And Mr. Shu.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Brumley. How are you
Morning. I'm good. How are you?
doing? Not bad. So if I could turn you to your rebuttal testimony on the last line of page 7, going on to page 8. I'm going to paraphrase here, but essentially you state that Columbia has been replacing bare steel since before 2014, and that Columbia's remaining bare steel is scattered around the system in small segments. That's correct?
That's correct.
Are these main segments you're referring to?
Yes.
So are these like generally attached to newer pipe that the company has replaced already?
It could be a combination of newer pipe or, the post-81 plastic, varying years, ages.
Okay, so if the company has been systematically replacing bare steel since before 2014, why are there so many small bits and random bits and pieces of bare steel main scattered throughout the system?
Yeah, so years ago they dropped in sections where there was risk. If there was a leak on bare steel, they may have just addressed enough of that. That's what they did at that time.
So it's kind of just the company replaced bits and pieces at it.
Yeah, and I'm talking, it's going back into the 80s, potentially 90s as well.
So in the company's Stride plan replacement, has that same thing been done?
It has not. We've taken on larger pieces of bare steel, to address the largest, most risky pieces of bare steel.
So you're saying the smaller bits of bare steel are connected to pipes replaced in maybe the 80s, 90s.
For the most part, yeah, different. So when we started in 14, we did not. I don't know if the question is, have we tied into bare steel? To my knowledge, we have not through the stride.
Okay. Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
Do you have anything pertaining to confidential
No,
testimony?
not at this time, no.
Staff?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Brumley, I'm Ruthie Herman. I'm an attorney in the Staff Counsel Division. It was nice to meet you this morning.
Also you.
And thank you for the explanation of soft restoration.
You're welcome.
Mr. Brumley, as a non-attorney, in your opinion, could you just describe in your own words what is the purpose of STRIDE?
The purpose of STRIDE is to improve our system by making it safer, more reliable, eliminating the risk of our aging bare steel, and in this case, the pre-82 plastic as a risk as well, for the safety and reliability for our customers.
And Mr. Brumley, following up on that, in your opinion, what are the riskiest assets in Columbia's system?
So the riskiest assets, in my opinion, would be bare steel and pre-82 plastic, in no particular order. But they are definitely the top two risks, in my opinion.
And Mr. Brumley, does the company perform annual leak surveys on the older plastic?
Yes, not annual, I'm sorry. I apologize. No, it's not annual on the older plastic. We do annual on bare steel. It's required every 3 years, but we do annual on bare steel. We do not on the plastic. On service lines, we do when it is within a business district. We will do an annual survey of the service lines.
And so there's no annual leak survey of older plastic in residential service lines?
Correct.
And, sir, can I ask you why not?
At this time, we just don't see the need to do that. The characteristics of pre-82 plastic, when it does leak, it is very quick to happen. There are no indications of that happening. You know, it's a brittle cracking, splitting of the pipe. When it tends to happen, it is what we classify as a grade 1 or a 2+. That has to be addressed immediately or within 21 days, according to our policy and procedure standards.
And Mr. Brumley, where exactly are the older plastic pipe located in Columbia's system?
I would not know exactly. I mean, it's scattered throughout the system, the older plastic.
Mr. Brumley, has the company conducted any type of detailed study to locate the older plastic pipe?
We have not. We do since I think 2011 record the color of the pipe, which gives us some indication, and that's done through our operations department when they're exposing a pipe for a leak or anything of that nature. So we have, as it's exposed, started gathering information there. But as far as doing a project specifically to find pre-82, we have not.
So, Mr. Brumley, if the company doesn't have detailed location information, how will the company know which pipe to replace?
We have location information. I just don't know it off the top of my head. I mean, we know where the plastic pipes are, and we know, the pre-82, so we would know that.
So you have the location of all pre-82 plastic pipe.
Yes.
Mr. Brumley, can I ask you, where in the case, in any of the testimony or responses to data requests, to your knowledge, are the specific miles of mains and number of services identified that the company plans to replace in the proposed plan?
Can you just clarify as to what material
Any?
or all materials?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And are you referring to 2025 or the entirety of the plan?
The entire, any parts of the plan, 2025 or beyond, and if there's anywhere in the case where there's the specific miles of mains and the specific number of services.
Yeah, so in our 2025 plan, we've addressed that. You know, the revised roster, the project roster that we had. For example, in 2025, there is 6.6 miles total to be replaced. 1.5 miles of that bare steel, 2.2 miles of that pre-82 plastic. The other remaining, you know, 2 miles of post-81 plastic and just over a mile and a half, almost 2 miles of pre-71 and post-70 steel. And we also in that plan list the services that are associated to those projects as well for 2025.
Mr. Brumley, does the plan provide the locations of the replacements?
I don't believe it's required to have the location of the replacements. Through STRIDE, we have to identify the cost, the estimate, and the completion date.
Your Honor, may I have permission to approach the witness?
Yes.
Yeah, so the roster has the project name, but I don't know that that's specifically what you're asking as far as where they are located.
An address, yeah.
It has the project name, which is street name, so I apologize. I mean, it could be a larger project with one street name.
But that's for 2025, not for
Correct.
the years that follow.
Correct. Thank you.
Mr. Brumley, may I ask you to look at what I just handed you and just read for me what it is on the front page?
Sure, it's the Maryland Public Utilities Code.
Yes.
4-210.
Great. And could I ask you to go to 4-210D2, which is at the bottom of the first page has like a cover, and the second page has text. Could I ask you to go to the bottom and just read D2 for me, sir?
Sure, a plan that, excuse me, a plan under this subsection shall include a timeline for the completion of each eligible project, the estimated cost of each project, a description of customer benefits under the plan, and any other information the Commission considers necessary to evaluate the plan.
And I know you're not an attorney, sir. Just in your opinion, do you believe that the plan submitted squares with these? Is
I
it
do.
consistent?
I do.
Your Honor, may I request permission to approach the witness once again?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have just one more. Thank you for your patience.
Bless you.
And Mr. Brumley, I handed you 3 different items just now.
Yes.
And Your Honor, I didn't ask to identify these because they're in Mr. Carlos's testimony that we're going to offer into evidence when he takes the stand. And then there's also a page from the company's application that I believe is already into evidence. Mr. Brumley, can you look at the question number 5-001, the company's response?
Okay.
And Mr. Brumley, are you the author of this one, Staff 5001?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Brumley, on page 2, could you just explain, or just yes or no, is there a Columbia Gas of Maryland summary where you have provided on the last line of page 2, miles to be replaced for 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, the projected miles? I want to ask you yes or no if that was what's included in the document.
That is in the document.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brumley, I also handed you attachment A of the company's STRIDE application, page 4 of 19.
Yes.
And I have tabs. Could you just read on there? Everybody has these colored tabs on there, just to show the 4 lines. I'd like to ask you if you would read those, beginning with the company's proposed and ending with on line 4, STRIDE, the word STRIDE 3 project. Would you, sir, be able to read those 3.5 lines?
Sure. The company's proposed 2025-2029 5-year plan focuses on replacing all eligible aging infrastructure, including bare steel and first-generation pre-82 plastic mains, along with associated service lines, either affiliated with the project or standalone, not affiliated with the STRIDE 3 project.
Thanks. And Mr. Brumley, I handed you the company's response to Staff 5003. Sir, are you the author and sponsor of that information?
I am.
Okay. Could I ask you to go to the bottom of that first page, the second paragraph from the bottom that starts the amount of bare steel?
Okay.
Sir, could you read that short paragraph?
Sure.
And thank you, and the paragraph that follows.
Sorry. The amount of bare steel to be eliminated is contingent on whether Columbia receives approval of STRIDE 3. If Columbia's STRIDE is approved based on the cap of $17 million per year, Columbia would estimate a replacement of 1 to 1.5 miles of bare steel replaced per year on average. Because Columbia plans to prioritize the deployment of capital funding to address higher risks such as internal line inspection, point of delivery, regulator station replacement, first generation pre-82 plastic, and aging service lines.
And may I ask you, sir, to read on the next page, the top small paragraph.
If Stride 3 is not approved, it is unlikely that Columbia will not be able to attract the significant capital necessary for such infrastructure improvements, thus impairing the level of replacement of bare steel. Thus, bare steel replacement could be diminished to nothing.
Okay. And Mr. Brumley, taking the company's response that you just read to us, taking it and juxtaposing it against what's in the application that you just read, how do you explain the contradiction? Or do you see a contradiction?
I don't see a contradiction. I don't follow.
Okay, so did you read in the attachment A that the company plans on replacing all eligible aging bare steel? And did you read that? And then did you or did you not state that there's actually a condition? It depends on financing.
I did. The proposed 5-year plan was the Stride plan. If we do not get the Stride plan, it could be different.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I have no more questions for Mr. Brumley.
Okay. I have a few questions that are pertaining to matters that are not confidential, his testimony, so I'm going to ask those, and then we'll go into confidential session.
Yeah, not to try and commandeer the control of this, but that last 5-3, staff 5-3 that he read the response to, there's a not in there that I was going to ask to clarify that probably should come out. It makes the sentence not make any sense. So I don't know if you want to ask that question or.
Stumbled on that.
Please go ahead and redirect.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Brumley, counsel for staff asked you to read your response to staff 5-3. And on the second page, first line, your response says, it is unlikely that Columbia will not be able to attract the significant capital necessary. Do you wish to correct that statement?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, it is unlikely that Columbia will be able to attract the significant capital necessary. Should not have been there.
Okay. Thank you. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you for your indulgence.
Mr. Brumley, are there leaks on pre-1982 plastic that are all the leaks that are occurring on pre-1982 plastic? Is it due to cracking or brittle cracking?
I would say, I can't say all, but I would say a significant amount.
But there are other reasons for leaks occurring on pre-1982 plastic.
There are. There can be.
The projects that are on the project list, I believe you described, I believe it's the first one where there were 3 prior leaks on that. You explained that those segments were replaced, I believe, when OPC questioned you. So in the plan, will you be replacing segments that have just recently been replaced?
Yeah, so if they were replaced as associated to a leak, it would be a very small piece to address the leakage. So it would be it could be a 5 to 10 to 15 foot section to address the leaking pre-82 plastic at the time. So if we were to replace that entire stretch, we would be replacing that.
In your testimony, I believe it's in your rebuttal testimony, page 3 to 4, you describe an incident that occurred in Hagerstown just recently due to a cracked piece of pre-1982 main line. Is the company aware of who the manufacturer was for that incident?
I'm not sure. That pipe should have been sent, but at this time, I don't know.
Okay. And was that, and you said that was due to a cracked piece, that was?
Correct.
Okay. Is it the practice of the company to identify who the manufacturer is once a leak is
Yes.
on pre-1982 plastic is identified?
Yes.
On page 4 of your rebuttal testimony, I believe you stated that the plastic leak data is shown in total, and you're referring to the project list. But it says, as the company cannot always distinguish between plastic and pre-1982 plastic due to previous record keeping. If the company lacks the data on the year and manufacture of those segments, how do you know, does the company know that the footage that's estimated in the project roster is accurate?
Yeah, so the information's there. Can I ask you what lines you were referring to on page 4?
Page 4, line 16 to 20.
16 to 20, thank you.
Not all data exists so that the company cannot always distinguish between plastic and pre-1982 plastic.
Yeah, so we go by the dates, to the best of my knowledge, for the date installed, and use that as a baseline. Anything pre-82, plastic. We won't know the manufacturer. We weren't required. Like I said earlier, we won't know the manufacturer or the type of pipe or anything. We know it's plastic. In our estimation, it's better to assume that it's for the safety and reliability of our customers and our system, that it is DuPont or Adelaide, what's known as Adelaide, than not.
So the estimates that are on the 2025 project roster, where it's broken down between pre-1982 plastic and post, that those estimates of footage to be replaced are accurate?
To the best of our knowledge, yes. There could be examples where you dig it up and there's a piece that's not pre-82, but per our records, to the best of our knowledge, that is accurate.
With respect to the 3 projects that ran over from Stride 2,
Yes.
can you provide the reasons why as to each one of those projects?
I don't know the specifics on each one, but there were permitting issues, some environmental permits, some local permits that delayed us getting those projects fully released in time. Environmental, for example, could be turnaround times anywhere from 6 to 8 months in some cases. So it mostly permitting. Length of time to receive the permits.
I'm going to direct a bench data request to Columbia for the 3 projects, which I believe are the Gorman project, the 4th Street project, and the Beam property project, as to the reasons for delay as to each one. Is the company able to, let me ask before I order it, the final costs of those projects, are those available as of yet?
Final cost could be on a couple. The one that just completed, it's going to take a little bit before we can get the mill and overlay cost and everything, but the ones that were completed prior to that, we should be able to get that.
So I'd ask in the bench data request to include costs, final costs of the projects, if it's not available for the one that just completed, as close to the final cost as possible. And included in that bench data request, I'd like the original estimates that were approved by the commission for those 3 projects. And that'll be bench data request number 1. With regard to, I'm going to go to page 9 of your rebuttal testimony, where it's starting actually on the bottom of page 8 into 9. You discuss service line replacement.
Mm-hmm.
How did the company arrive at the estimate that 75% or more of the total service lines along the projects are to be replaced?
We based that on past experience through Stride 1 and 2 and other projects we've done.
And who decides when there will be a replacement of a service line?
So that's when it's in the field. Excuse me. We have employees that are on every job overseeing the work. They will make a determination based on a multitude of things: depth, location of the meter, making sure it's up to today's codes and standards and safe and reliable. So that's determined typically at the early pre-construction phase and construction phase.
Are you familiar with the table that's included in attachment A of the application, which I believe is page 8 of the application, that gives an analysis of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions?
I am.
Does that table include emission reduction from pre-1982 plastic?
I don't know that.
I'm going to ask that to be bench data request number 2. And that will be whether or not the table that is included in attachment A, page 8 of the application, whether the analysis of the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions includes the reduction of pre-1982 plastic as well. I have a clarifying question about the revised exhibit project list, RB2R. Can you explain why on some of the projects under service line replacement, the total plastic services is more than estimated number of service line replacements? If I can direct you to an example. So for example, on page 1 for Colonial Drive, it says estimate number of service line replacements 19, but then on rebuttal it says total plastic service lines 23, I believe.
Yeah, I see what you're referring to. I don't have a good explanation right now.
And I just, because it's on several of the projects, I notice even going down, the numbers are different, and there may be, I just don't know why they would be different. If the total estimate, so say for instance on the National Highway project is 30, and then it says total plastic service lines 39.
Yeah, I do see that. As I sit here right now, I can't give a good answer.
As far as what's not confidential, that concludes my questions. Is there any redirect from the company based on my questions?
I do, Your Honor, yes. Mr. Brumley, in your testimony with respect to replacing what you might describe as newer pieces in a project
Mm-hmm.
that's associated with items that you know to be pre-82.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a cost consideration when that decision is made?
There is. Even bare steel pre-82, they, as we said before, they're very sporadic. They're spread out in small chunks. So when we look at that, we do take cost into consideration. First of all, it's based on risk detections. We are focused on that for safety and reliability. But when we look at that, there's some examples. For example, if we utilized a smaller piece of, let's just say 1992 plastic, if we utilize that, we would have to take it out of service, test it, tie in 2 locations. There's a cost associated to that. Or what would it be if we replaced it? Now, there's conditions like ground conditions, if it's in soil, if it's in concrete, things of that nature. The other example I could give is where that pipe is located. It may only we may only have the opportunity to replace that section on the opposite side of the street. And for an example, if it's laying in close proximity to a water line, a sewer line, other utilities, by 811 law, there's a 24-inch, tolerance zone of any utility. So we would have to relocate that to the other side. If we did that, relocate a small piece, come back over, we would add crossings, we would add fittings, we would add footage to do that and add risk from a damage prevention perspective. So in total, you're still getting the same safety improvements, but at a lesser cost. So yes, there's extensive consideration for that.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Your Honor, may I ask a question off of your question? Or is
Pertaining to my questions?
yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Brumley, when the judge asked you recently, I forget the specific of the question, but you stated that the company is recording manufacturer when addressing plastic leaks, right? Like when you record it, when you dig it up?
If there's a leak, we would see if we can visibly see, if we could tell what manufacturer there is. If we can't, we can't.
And you stated that the company, knows where its pre-1982 plastic is, or 1982 pre-1982 plastic, is in the system generally.
Generally, we know, based on data installed.
So why does the company not have the data on pre-82 plastic leaks?
Pre-82 plastic leaks?
Yeah, in your rebuttal testimony, I think we've been over several times, page 4, you said that you don't have plastic leak data shown in total and not divided between plastic and pre-82 plastic.
So it's total. It's not 82. It's total. So even years back, that wasn't required to be recorded. So it's total plastic leaks. It's not sectioned into
but
pipe manufacture and everything.
Sure. You just said you're recording all that though. So why does the company not have the data on which
We're doing that now. We weren't doing that for years, so we don't have that data all the way back to, when we started installing plastic.
But you haven't provided you haven't provided the, so, okay, when did you start recording this information?
I don't know exactly when we started recording that information, but
Generally in the 2010s, maybe?
it could be. I don't be the best witness for that. Ms. Alexander might be able to answer that question.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brumley.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We are back from confidential session. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll begin, I believe, is Ms. Alexander, company's next witness. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. Thank you. We can go off the record.